Most people hit a wall on a problem. They try 3 solutions, they fail, take a break, they try the same 3 again. Sound familiar? You're not lazy. You're not stupid. You're just stuck in the same mental cycle that everyone else falls into. Think about it. That project at work that never gets done. The budget that always slips. The goal you've been chasing for months without progress. It's not effort that's missing. It's the way you're thinking about the problem. Today, I'm going to show you a method that elite problem solvers and researchers have been using for decades. Methods that let them spot solutions that others miss for months or even years. This isn't brainstorming, and it isn't think harder. It's a precise, repeatable system called divergent thinking. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to apply 5 levers that will generate ideas you didn't even know were possible. So stick with me for the next 10 minutes, and I guarantee that you'll see problems in a completely new way and start finding solutions that weren't visible before. It's freezing up here, guys, high elevation. It's gonna snow any day now, so bear with me here. So let's talk about the mechanism of fixation. Why do smart people get stuck? It's rarely a lack of effort. It's because they solve the same problem the same way, cycling through the same 3 options, hitting a wall, stopping, and then repeating the loop. Divergent thinking is what breaks that cycle. Now let's be clear here. Divergent thinking is not brainstorming. It's a structured process for expanding the solution space before your evaluation collapses it. If you come up with 10 ideas that all fall into the same category, you haven't diverged. Real divergence gives you options that are fundamentally distinct from each other. Now, divergent thinking doesn't require random inspiration or waiting for the right mood. It happens through specific steps that you can run just like a program. And research shows that divergent methods mainly flip a few key variables. So you don't need dozens of techniques. You just need to know which switches to flip. So there are 5 variables that can produce this state. Each one is a lever that changes the problem so new options become visible. And when you use them together, they give you an organized way to generate ideas. The 5 variables are constraints, level of abstraction, representation, perspective, and forced connections. So I'll show you how these levers work in real time. But be warned here, the 5th lever is the one that usually makes people the most uncomfortable because it's the one that actually breaks the rules. All right, let's get started. So lever 1 is constraints and inversion. Most people think constraints are handcuffs. In reality, constraints define the solution space to your problem. They tell you what kind of answers are possible. And when you change the constraints, the entire space changes and new ideas will emerge naturally. So one of the most effective ways to manipulate these constraints is a mental model called inversion. Now, inversion means turning the problem upside down, reversing it, or flipping it. It sounds counterintuitive, but stick with me. This is exactly where breakthroughs happen. So instead of focusing on the same core assumptions, you deliberately reverse them. Like rather than asking, how do I solve this better? You ask, what would the exact opposite of success look like? I know it's a little bit funny, but stick with me here. So practically, inversion works by reversing the goal, the success criteria, or the direction of your effort. You ask, what if the goal were the opposite? For example, instead of asking how to make a process more efficient, you ask how to make it extremely inefficient. Instead of asking how to reduce cost, you ask how to increase it as much as possible. So the reversed solution isn't your end goal, it's obvious. But it exposes hidden assumptions that usually go unnoticed. When you attempt to make the problem absurdly difficult, illegal, or impossible, you force those assumptions to the surface. These fixed ways of thinking are the real source of your fixation. Now, fixation isn't a lack of ideas or tunnel vision. It's being trapped inside one frame of the problem. So here's how inversion works. We define the goal. Start with forward thinking, right? Like increase sales. Then invert the problem. Consider the exact negative outcome. Decrease sales as fast as possible, for example. And now divergence. List as many ways that negative outcome could happen, but don't judge yet. Only after this expansion do you move into convergent thinking, right? So we reinvert now. Use the logic to identify what actions to avoid and which strategies to implement to prevent those failures. Now this exposes blind spots and false assumptions that your thinking hides. All right, let's go to level 2 now. That's levels of abstraction. Many problems feel difficult, not because they're complex, but because you're engaging them at the wrong level. Every problem exists on a spectrum of abstraction, and where you choose to sit determines what solutions you can see. So changing levels can even make the original problem dissolve rather than be solved. So if you're stuck, you need to zoom in or zoom out. Now, most people stay stuck at one level, but the pros shift between 3 levels. I'm going to explain them to you. There's the concrete level, think like action, right? This describes the what and the how of the immediate situation. Fixation here looks like getting bogged down into technical details or specific tools. For example, the drill bit keeps breaking. Instead of diving into the details, ask, do you even need a hole at all, right? I'm giving you an example. And then there's the functional level, like think purpose. So this shifts the focus to what is this for? And fixation here comes from assuming the current method is the only way to achieve the goal. For example, I don't actually need a hole. I need to join 2 pieces of wood together. So when the problem moves to the functional level, it stops being about fixing a drill and becomes about achieving an outcome. Then there's the system level. Think identity, right? This is the context and the relationship level. How does this fit into the larger scheme of things? At the right level, some problems vanish instead of being solved. So to move between these levels, use like language triggers, right? To move up, ask, what is the ultimate intent of this? Or what is this a part of? This pulls you out of the how and into the why. And to move down, ask, what does this look like in practice? Or what is the physical bottleneck? This forces vague goals back into observable reality. All right, let's move on to level 3 now. It's representation of the problem. So the way a problem is represented determines what the mind can see. Simply using different words is not enough, because rewording keeps the same underlying structure in place. To create true divergence, you have to change the shape of the information itself. So you have to take the problem out of a written paragraph and put it into a different form, right? You stop talking and you pick a non-text format, like a diagram, a timeline, a grid, or a map. And you translate every piece of information of your problem into that new illustration. I'm serious, do this, draw it out. So when you do this, patterns will emerge. You'll see gaps where things don't connect, or clusters where too many things are grouped together. Now those gaps are signals. They point to assumptions you didn't realize you were making. And instead of a list of items, use a timeline. Instead of describing trade-offs, map them visually. Changing the form helps you see what your brain was missing. All right, let's go to lever 4, and that's perspective substitution. This is the outsider's edge. It works because different perspectives carry different priorities, constraints, and assumptions. The key is not imagining what someone would say, but adopting their constraints, incentives, and blind spots. This power comes from inheriting constraints and incentives, not from empathy or imagination. Like a child doesn't care about professionalism or budgets. Your competitor doesn't care about preserving your current process. And an outsider doesn't accept constraints just because that's how it's always been. So each perspective carries a different set of rules. When you switch perspectives, you switch the rules of the problem without even realizing it. This doesn't add creativity. It removes the assumptions you didn't know you were obeying. All right, let's hope it's not too noisy here, but let's move on to number 5, lever 5. It's forced connections. Now, most fixations survive because thinking stays inside a single domain. You keep looking for answers in the same place the problem came from. This lever increases the distance between ideas. Now, research on divergent thinking shows a simple relationship. The closer the associations, the more predictable the results. But as the distance increases, new options appear. The forced connections make that distance happen. It doesn't appear on its own. So now, there are 3 ways to use this lever. First, it's forced association. You bring in something unrelated, an object, an industry, or a role, and make it interact with your problem. Okay, the rule is simple. It has to matter, this association. So the moment the connection feels strange or uncomfortable, you found a hidden assumption. If you feel uncomfortable, it's because you hit some fixation. Okay, it's a key word, fixation. Second, attribute recombination. So you break the problem into parts, what it's for, who it's for, where it happens, what limits it, what motivates behavior. Then mix them in unusual ways and force ideas you usually wouldn't find alone. And the third way is cross-domain transfer. You hand the problem to a completely different field and borrow how they think, not what they would say, right? So how do they decide? What do they protect? What do they optimize for? Each field has its usual moves. So borrow them, and the rules of your problems will shift. So the point of this lever isn't randomness, it's friction. When 2 ideas resist being combined, they expose a rule you didn't realize you were following. So this lever should give you a completely different kind of answer. It's getting really cold out here and there's a lot of noise, so I hope it still sounds good. The enabling rule now, by the way, it's separate divergence from judgment, right? This is the enabling condition for all the others. Premature judgment collapses divergence, even if it feels smart. The brain operates here in 2 distinct ways that struggle to coexist. Divergence relies on semantic distance and expansive mental states, and convergence, or judgment, prioritizes logic, accuracy, and narrowing down. When you judge an idea while you are still generating them, you force an instant switch from expansion to contraction. This binary switch acts like a cognitive brake. It pushes your mind back towards safe solutions to avoid the risk of producing a bad idea. Okay, the fix is to generate first and evaluate later. So I I highly recommend you set a quota for ideas. Like if you have 5 options, keep going until you have 20. You're not trying to eliminate judgment, you just want to delay it. And when it returns, your judgment, it will be sharper and far more effective because it has better raw material now to work with. So let's recap the divergent process here, okay? Divergent thinking is just a phase. You expand the space, explore it briefly, then you step back. Too little divergence traps you. Too much divergence creates noise. The skill is controlling the process, not just being creative. So try this today. Take a problem, apply these 5 levers, flip a constraint using inversion, shift the level of abstraction, change a representation to a diagram, adopt a new perspective, and force some novel connection. And then list 20 ideas without a single moment of judgment. If you keep getting the same answers, that's not insight. It's not what we're looking for, right? It's fixation. And if your thinking keeps returning to the same answers as before, it's because you're solving the same problem with the same defaults. So use these methods and you'll stop going in circles and instead start finding the right solutions. I may be available to work with you directly. If these levers reveal a mental block in your thinking, not lack of effort, I offer a private 60-minute diagnostic call. We will pinpoint fixation and restructure the problem so new options appear for you. The link is in the description below.